The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Market Fantasy. The brand new offer for new customers. Pledge just $5, get $100 bonus funds. Use promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Monday afternoon, October 6th, around 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the round of 16 matches in Shanghai. So we're going to break down the matchup taking place in the fourth round, taking place on Tuesday and Wednesday. Before we get into any of the preview of those matches, a reminder to support the show by subscribing on YouTube. Reminder, you can also find the podcast on Spotify and Apple for audio only. So it doesn't really matter how you consume the podcast. Please leave some support, though, leaving a rating and a review on Spotify and Apple, and leaving a like and subscribe on YouTube. So hopefully, if you have not done so already, you hit the buttons and help support the show's growth. Looking at the actual merch store, though, we have a lot of great tennis merch. We have sweatshirts, we have t-shirts, we have mugs, high quality, very affordable, different colors as well. Check out the merch store. I think you'll like the options that we have. Now, a reminder, if you are tired of actually going through each SGPN show on their own YouTube channels, trying to search up each of them, there is one easier way to actually get all the access in one easy location. Go to the SGPN app, free to download in the App Store, and once again, you get access to all of our picks and podcasts in one easy location. Check out the SGPN app, free to download in the App Store. So, looking at the recap of the plays we had for the third round, we ended up splitting. Bit annoying, we didn't end up sweeping because we called Musetti minus 3.5 at minus 138 as the lock. He won in straight sets, but unfortunately he did not cover, as he won by 3 games against his opponent there, Darderi, which was a bit annoying. But either way, I can't say it was a bad read because he won in straight sets and he just didn't cover. So it is what it is. Lost by the hook there for the lock, but for the dog weight and alt spread on Medvedev, minus 3.5 at plus 124, and beat Fokina in straight sets as he won by 4 games. So once again, we ended up splitting, basically broke even. Musetti was the better player for most of it, but unfortunately he could not win by a big enough margin. Is what it is, but either way, ended up picking up a split for the third round. So getting into the recap of the third round as a whole, we ended up having one main shocker. We had a couple of retirements on the first day of the third round. First match, Diallo beat Goffin in 3 games, and then Goffin quit. So Diallo got basically a bye into the fourth round. Rune ended up beating Humbert again. Humbert still can't beat this guy, as Rune beat him in straight sets. Bergs ended up beating Cerundolo. We did like Bergs in that one. Thought Cerundolo was vulnerable. Thought it'd be a close match, and it was early as Bergs got the job done in straight sets, but there was a breaker in the first set. Then you had Fritz, who eventually did lose to Perricard. No breakers, which was kind of the shocker. 6-4, 7-5. Fritz was playing a bunch of tennis, felt like fatigue played a factor finally, and Perricard did a good job of really just hanging in there and getting the job done in straight sets. Munar ended up beating Nishioka in 3. We called that one. Thought that Munar would probably win in 3, and he did, as Nishioka won the second set. Then no-showed the third, as Munar beat him 6-1 in the final set. Hanfman, though, ended up winning a set against Djokovic. Good for him. Didn't win the match, but still winning a set is better than nothing, as he won the first set. Djokovic ended up responding, winning the second and third sets, as he was able to advance into the fourth round. Then you had a pair of retirements, as you ended up having Makic, who got injured again. Seems like it happens every couple months. Happened again, as Vatrad only lost 1 game out of the 10. He ended up winning 9-1. And then Makic said, "Why am I here? Get me out of here." And he ended up retiring. So a nice, easy win there for Vatrad, the qualifier, who continues his Cinderella run. And last but not least, the shocker of the round, Sinner ended up winning the first set against Griekspoor. Then he ended up losing the second set 7-5 after blowing a couple of break points towards the end of the second set. Then he started cramping, and he couldn't move. And he ended up retiring as Griekspoor advances via retirement, beating the number 2 player in the world. Shocker, but then you remember Sinner had a really tough schedule, winning in Beijing, playing midweek, then having to travel immediately to Shanghai. Not a great actual spot for Sinner. It's why we actually did not pick him to win the event. I know normally we pick him to win every hardcourt event, especially when Alcaraz isn't here. We didn't take Sinner. We thought it was a bad spot, and I did mention in the history of the event, which I still have written down, you have not had a repeat champion here since Djokovic in 2012 and 2013. That history will continue because Sinner was defending champion. We'll have a new champion once again at this event, but we did not take him to win the event, so we actually have a couple of guys who are still live to win the tournament. So to recap I'll actually get into that after I recap what happened on Monday. But the main story was the retirements. You had 3 people who ended up quitting, including Sinner, who cramped, couldn't move, and he ended up having to retire against Greekspor. Nice win for Greekspor. He's had a pretty rough go of it the last couple months. We'll see if that is the catalyst for a good showing here for the rest of the event. Moving on to the matches on Monday, not too much drama. Only 2 matches ended up going to a third set. Felix beat De Jong in straight sets. de Minaur beat Majcik in straight sets. Sheng ended up losing to Borges in 3. Fun match, but either way, Borges outlasted him in the third set 6-3. Leshka ended up beating Shapo in straight sets, thought he would. So Musetti beat Darderi in straight sets, but not by enough margin to cover the spread. Rinderknech beat Zverev again, like he did in Wimbledon. Nice job by him, and Zverev continues to disappoint, which is a surprise to nobody. Tien continues to play well after losing in the final in Beijing. He keeps rolling, ended up beating Nori in straight sets, and Medvedev beat Fokina in straight sets again for the second time in about a week. So not too much drama there on Monday. Main drama was on Sunday, but still, for the recap of the outrights, so far looking pretty good, knock on wood. For the first quarter, we have de Minaur at plus 225, who's still, of course, alive in the quarter. So hopefully that works out to our advantage. Fokina did lose a 9-1. I can live with that. We'll see where we go from here, but de Minaur is still alive in the first quarter. Second quarter, we have 2 people who are alive. They could face off against each other in the quarters. We have Musetti at 5-1, and we also have Leheshka at 6-1. Both guys are alive, so can't really complain there. Third quarter, we have Djokovic, who is available at 175, and of course, he's now favored to win the entire event, which is good for us. Ruud ended up losing, but we have Djokovic at 175. Can't really complain there. For the fourth quarter, though, we went 0-2, so a bad quarter for us. We had Sinner at minus 220. Didn't bet it, obviously. We have a cutoff of about minus 180, give or take, for a quarters, but I have to list them if I think he's going to win it. And we had Fritz at 4-1, who also ended up losing. So we still have a chance to win 3 out of the 4 quarters, which is pretty good for us. But the good news is we lost 0 outright guys to win the entire event. For the outrights, we have Djokovic at 9-1, who's now the favorite to win the event. We have de Minaur at 16-1, who is one of the favorites as well. And we have Leheshka as our long shot at plus 5,000, who is also alive. So overall, a very good episode. We're going to sacrifice Sinner in the fourth quarter in order to promote the 3 shots that we have to win the entire event. And you're looking at Djokovic, de Minaur, and Leheshka, who have been looking sharp so far in the event. So we'll see if we can get one of them over the finish line. We'll see how many quarters we can cash. But either way, a good episode for us for the outrights, but hopefully it continues that way because we still have a couple rounds to go for the quarters, etc. So looking at the actual comment section, I see Manzi stopping by. I see a couple comments here about Tien as well. Yeah, Tien has been looking good. It looked ugly early in the event, kept dropping sets to Kmanovic, dropped a set and a break to Mutet. He's a battler. You could argue that he's not the most talented guy. That's fine. He plays hard. And you know what? I respect it. Guy's got a lot of mental toughness, and Tien's definitely willing to go down with the ship, and the ship has not sank yet, so good for him. I see Enigma stopping by, asking about the Musetti match against Felix. I'll get into that in a second, but I am going to preview that match in a few minutes. And I see a couple people commenting about the FAA and Musetti matchup, and I see Manzi mentioned the path for Joker does look very good. Knock on wood. Knock on wood, it does. We have him at 9-1. We'll hopefully cash that at the end of the actual event, but we'll go from there. Couple of rounds to go. Thinking of any other talking points that are worth mentioning for tennis, I don't really have any. I'm trying to think if there's anything else worth talking about, and I don't think I have anything to talk about. Props to Anisimova, who ended up winning the China Open, second 1,000 title for her. Nice job by Anisimova on the women's side. Nothing else to really add, so we'll move on into the preview of the 4th round. Before we get into the breakdown of the 4th round matches, a reminder they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is MyBookie.ag. Using the bet on football, tennis, they have a prop builder second to none. They're not as simple. Bet anything, anywhere, anytime. Use crypto for deposits and payouts. You can sign up for your new account. Use code SGPN for a special 100% deposit. Actually, a bet back bonus $500 for new customers. So once again, 100% bet back bonus up to $500 for new customers. MyBookie.ag promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Novig, which is America's #1 prediction market for sports. Novig's getting the best prices. You can get some great reduced juice bets. For example, Eagles minus 7.5 is minus 103. It's available in a bunch of states, 35 plus to be exact, and use the Novig app with our promo deal that we have with them. Spend just $5, get $50 in bonus funds when you use the promo code SGPN. So again, on the actual Novig, promo code SGPN. For the special promo, spend $5, get $50 in bonus funds. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finish recapping the third round. Time to go on into the fourth round here in the Shanghai Masters. So, starting off with the first match, we're going to look at the matchup between Perricard and Rune. Rune's decent favorite, minus 230. Perricard's about plus 185. For the spread, minus 2.5 for Rune, plus 2.5 for Perricard. It's minus 135, though, for Perricard plus the 2.5. The over-under in games is set at 25.5. Now, for the classic Perricard bet, which is the tie break, it is going to be very expensive, so you really can't take it. But just a reminder that it's going to be pretty likely for a tie break in this one. Then again, the Fritz match did not have one, so maybe Perricard or Rune can break and avoid a breaker at all in this matchup, but I personally doubt it. Now, for the head-to-head history, they faced off twice, and it has been pretty competitive. Faced off in Toronto this year, Rune did win in straight sets, and faced off in Basel last year. Perricard ended up winning in straight sets en route to the title. So they've split the two meetings, but the one outdoor meeting was this year, and Rune won in straight sets. Both meetings, though, had a tiebreak in the first set, so keep that in mind. Rune has looked pretty good, beat Baez in straight sets and beat Humbert in straight sets. Perricard ended up beating Nardi in straight sets, who I think is not very good personally, and beat Fritz in straight sets. So now the guys dropped a set yet. Head-to-head's been close. Now I think Rune's looked better than Perricard. You could argue Fritz was compromised based on the stamina concerns after having a deep run in Tokyo, playing the Laver Cup, etc. It felt like he ran out of gas. Now, I do think Rune's looked better, but we know Rune can be a head case who can break himself if the shot selection is not there, which can be a problem. Perricard, though, is a serve bot. We know that's what he is, so if he can neutralize the Rune return game, he has a chance. Then, if not, he's kind of screwed. So for this matchup, I see it being relatively close personally. I think a breaker is going to happen, but the problem is the juice is so heavily in favor of the breaker. You have to get creative with how you want to play it because, for example, the tie break in this matchup in any set is at minus 300. So my favorite play is actually the first set tie break, which you can find at a good price. If you want to go 10.5, you can find that at minus 107, but the first set over 12.5 games is plus 128. It's cashing in both meetings in the head-to-head. I think Perricard can win a set, but Rune did look a lot better against Humbert than he did against Baez in the first round. You can find Perricard team total at 12.5. He has to win a set, but you could argue that if he does end up winning a set, it's guaranteed to cash. So with that being the case, you could find the team total at a pretty reasonable number, and if you want to go for it, it's at minus 135. A reminder that Perricard to win a set's minus 155, and I think we know that if he ends up winning a set, you'll get a breaker in there as well. He should be going over. So if you want to save some juice, I would take the team total instead of winning a set. You could probably save around 20, 30 cents by shopping around. Tiebreak, though, cheapest price I found was minus 250. So I don't mind first set tiebreak. Back to head-to-head history. You can get that at around plus 128. That's my main thought for this one. For the match, I think Rune is going to win, but I don't trust Rune enough to actually pull it off. So I'll go with the first set tiebreak instead at plus money as my main play for this one. Moving on to the next matchup. Looking at the matchup between, where do I want to go for this one? So for this one, we'll go to Munar taking on Djokovic. For this one, Joker's minus 500. You have Munar at around plus 370. For the spread, you have minus 4.5 for Djokovic, plus 4.5 for Munar. The over-under is at 20.5. Now, Joker in straight sets is around minus 150, minus 160, and Munar to win a set is plus money. It's at around plus 125. Now, Munar's been really good on hard court this season compared to his usual standard because he tends to be a clay specialist. This year, not so much, and he's been good in this event so far as he has beaten Nishioka, beat Kaboli, beat Fucsovics. Decent trio for opponents there. For Djokovic, he has been okay. Beat Cilic, who was not in good form, but he ended up winning in straight sets. With a breaker, it was close, but he got the job done in straight sets. And then he ended up beating Hanfmann in 3. So Joker's been winning, not in dominant fashion, but either way, a win's a win. And Djokovic, of course, should advance into the quarterfinals. However, do I think Joker is guaranteed to win in straight sets? I'm going to say no. I think he's going to, but I think Munar's proven that he has the game to frustrate opponents, and he has been a lot sharper on hard court in this year's schedule than previous years. I think one set might be close here. I think Joker rolling is actually not a guarantee for this one. So I don't mind the Djokovic team total over, actually, for this matchup at around minus 130. I think Munar can hang in there. I think he'd force one competitive set. We've seen Joker be vulnerable, and we have seen Munar look sharp against good competition. I think Joker wins, but I can see personally a 7-6, 6-3, something like that. Something pretty standard, looks pretty reasonable, and Joker does end up winning. But I think Munar can actually push Joker to a difficult set. And with that being the case, I do think there might be some value on Joker team total over in this one. I know Hanfman has a good serve, and that was on display in the first set, which is why he ended up winning the first set. But Munar's been playing well. I think Munar can make it interesting, make it physical, and maybe Joker does drop a set. Faced off a couple years ago, about 7 years ago, in the middle of Djokovic's prime, and that was in the French Open. Joker won in straight sets, but every set was 6-4 or closer, as the first set was 7-6. So back in Djokovic's prime, Munar actually was able to force a breaker and force a couple of 6-4. So definitely not exactly a fair comp, I'll admit, because it's on clay, and it was 7 years ago. But the point is, Munar historically has actually pushed Djokovic a little bit, from what we can gather from that limited amount of data. I think you're going to see a close set, and then we'll go from there. So give me Djokovic team total over 12.5 as my main thoughts for this one. Don't see much value on the spread. I think Munar's played well enough to keep this somewhat close, and Djokovic has not exactly looked that sharp so far in this event. He's been winning, but not in dominant fashion. Give me Munar to keep this somewhat close for this matchup prediction. Moving on to the next one. You're looking at a matchup between Tien and Medvedev for the third time this season. Tien is 2-0. Now, Medvedev's massive favorite, about minus 330. Tien's around plus 245. For the spread, minus 3.5 for Medvedev at minus 134. I see Tien plus 3.5 games at plus 102. For the over-under, I see 21.5. Now, they faced off, I'd say, last week, and it was close, and then you ended up seeing Medvedev cramp, and he had to quit. So, a reminder, Tien was down but not out. Medvedev was serving for the match, got broken, then eventually lost second set, then did end up losing via retirement in the third. Tien, though, 2-0. We've seen them have close battles, though. Australian Open went to a fifth set breaker, and Beijing was in a deciding set as well. Tien ended up beating Kecmanovic, beat Mutet, and beat Norrie, all in fun matchups, but either way, got the job done each time. Medvedev, though, has been coasting. Beat relative... I mean, it was a joke the first round match. Ended up winning in really convincing fashion. He lost 2 games in a second round match after having a bye in the first round. Then beat Fokina in straight sets. Now, it's pretty tricky to break down because Tien historically has, of course, given Medvedev problems, but he was serving for the match in the second set about a week ago. Now, Medvedev ended up cramping, and it shows that Tien has frustrated Medvedev physically over the course of their 2 meetings. Now, Medvedev looks a lot better now, of course, because he had a bye, won 2 matches in straight sets, and Tien's had a bit of a tougher go of it because he made it an extra round than Medvedev in Beijing, so he played the final. Then he went to a third set against Mutet and Kecmanovic, and then he beat Norrie. So he has played more tennis. You could argue that Tien's, I'd say, amount of tennis might catch up to him if this goes into a marathon, but I think Tien has to be at least under consideration just based on the spread. Medvedev won against Fokina. It wasn't easy in the second set. He was also sweating a ton. So if this match does end up going distance, it actually could hurt Medvedev, and we'll see if he can physically withstand the long rallies Tien will put him in. But I think Medvedev probably wins, but I can't bet this at this current number. I don't see any value on Medvedev for me. I think that for a guy who's 0-2 against this guy with a retirement about a week ago, do I want to lay 330 in the rematch? I don't. I really don't. I think Tien might have some value at plus 3.5 games at plus 102. Keeps it somewhat close. Maybe get a breaker in there, and you end up going to a Medvedev win. That's not easy, and you end up seeing Medvedev advance in a close battle. Medvedev team total over 12.5, minus 130. I don't mind that. I think he's played well in the event, and I think that he looks sharp against Fokina. But the issue for me is still pretty simple. Medvedev against Tien just hasn't put it all together yet. And I do think it's in store, but I do think Tien can force at least one close set. We saw it in the meeting about a week ago. The first 2 sets ended up going 7-5. So I don't mind Medvedev team total over. He might win. He might lose. Give me a marathon, and I think you'll get at least one close set. I'll go Medvedev team total over 12.5. See Rex mentioning the over in games here. I don't mind that either. I think Medvedev or Tien could win one lopsided set, but either way, I think one set minimum will be close. I don't mind the over for games. I don't mind the team total over for Medvedev. I think Tien hangs in there. I think he'll end up losing, but I think that you'll see a closer match than the odds makers suggest. Give me team total over from Medvedev at around minus 130. Moving on to the next matchup. Going to look at the matchup between, we'll go with the Felix match taking on Musetti, which might be the matchup of the round. So for this one, Felix is a dog. Musetti's around minus 135. Felix is around plus 110. For the spread, minus 1.5 for Musetti, plus 1.5 for Felix. The over-under is at 23.5. Now, Musetti ended up not doing us any favors for the lock last episode. He won in straight sets, so can't fault them too much, but didn't win by enough against Darderi. Also beat Comasagna in straight sets. Now, Felix has been good, beat Tabilo and beat De Jong, both in straight sets. Now, Musetti and Felix have a pretty long history against each other, and it's been pretty fair. It's been pretty even. So they faced off this year in Miami, and Musetti won in 3 sets. The bronze medal match in the Olympics on clay last year, Musetti won in a 3rd set. Davis Cup in 2022, you saw Felix win in straight sets. Florence on hard court in 2022, Felix won in straight sets as well. Clay in 2022, Musetti won in Monte Carlo. Clay in 2021, Musetti ended up winning. And Clay in 2021 in Barcelona, Felix ended up winning. So the point is to face off this year on hard court as the only recent matchup I could actually use for a comparison, because it's on hard court and was this year. Musetti won in 3. Now, I do think it's worth mentioning that Felix hasn't playing very well, and he did look sharp in his match against De Jong and Tabilo. We know Tabilo did win a title a couple weeks ago in Chengdu. Musetti hasn't really played great competition in the event. Lost to Tien via retirement in Beijing. Then he showed up here. Comasagna, I think we all know, is not a great hardcourt player. He's young, he's entertaining, not really known as being a great hardcourt player. And Darderi, we know, has gotten better on hardcourt, still not really known for being a hardcourt player, more of a clay specialist, so it's a step up in competition for Musetti. Simply put, the price feels disrespectful for Felix. This feels like, honestly, a pick'em. I don't see much of an edge for either guy. I think Felix would be the option at plus money. I think it's going to be close. I think it comes down to the wire. But I think you're looking at a guy who, in Musetti, who can definitely pull this off, but Felix has the firepower to actually force Musetti to move around the court. Felix maybe comes forward a time or two. We saw him look good, of course, in the U.S. Open, making it to the semis and taking a set off center. But I think the price is just off for me. I understand Musetti has been better on hardcourt this year than previous years, but minus 135 feels very, very expensive. When I see a very close matchup, the one that faced off this year in Miami, that went to a 3rd set. It wasn't an easy win for Musetti. I'm going to take Felix in this one for plus money. I think it should be closer to pick him. I think Musetti might win. I think Felix might win. I like the over. I think it ends up being a marathon and an overall war. But with the amount of tennis Musetti's played and with what I think should be a very tough matchup, I'll take Felix, who's the more rested guy, who ended up not playing in Beijing. He ended up having a pretty long absence because he got married, and he came back and looked sharp. So give me married. Felix get the job done here at plus money. Had some concerns about layoff after the U.S. Open, and he has put all those concerns to bed. He's been good. He's had some success against Musetti. It's been pretty balanced in general. So I'll go for the plus money and what I think is a very close matchup. That's kind of my thoughts there. Look at the comment section, though. I see Manzi mentioning that FAA is pretty hit or miss, but he's in form right now. I agree. I see Rex mentioning the unforced error issues, which can be a factor too. But I think for the sake of the price, I don't exactly believe in Musetti being this big of a favorite against, once again, Felix. So I'll go with the dog here for the value. I'll go for Felix at plus money to get the job done here against Musetti. Moving on to the last matchup we're going to talk about between Rinderknech and Lehecka. So we have Lehecka to win the event, and we got a great draw because it's not Zverev. So we're pretty happy where we stand with Lehecka. Minus 280 as a favorite. Rinderknech off the win against Zverev is plus 225. For the spread, minus 3.5 for Lehecka at plus money, plus 115. Plus 3.5 games for Rinderknech at around minus 150. The over-under is at 23.5. The over is plus 102. The under is a minus 132. Set spread, Lehecka in straight sets is minus 103. Rinderknech to win a set is minus 127. Faced off 2 times, and you had different results for each meeting. Faced off in Indian Wells about 2 years ago, and Lehecka won in straight sets. Last year, though, in Marseille, in Rinderknech's home country of France, he won in straight sets. So tied 1-1. Both of them were straight set wins, but very close. Rinderknech won 7-5, 7-6, and Lehecka in Indian Wells, ended up winning by coincidence 7-6, 7-5. So you've seen 4 sets, all with 12-plus games, and you might see a similar story here in this one. Leshka has been coasting. He's been really, really good, and I think he should look sharp again. Beat Hallis and beat Chapo in straight sets, and he also was good in the Davis Cup as he carried Czech to a win against Team USA, beating Tiafoe and beating Fritz. Now, for Rinderknech, we know he's been up and down. He's been better recently this year. Beat Goffin in Beijing, lost de Minaur in a close 3 sets. Good showing because de Minaur won a set against Sinner. So the point is he was playing pretty well. Then ended up beating Medjedovic via retirement in the first round. Beat Mikkelsen, who's been awful lately, and beat Zverev in 3. Zverev has not been as sharp lately. You could argue that he's overplayed and fatigue's played a factor, but he was playing well. So I'll give him props there. The thing is, Lehechka, I think, does have a game that can frustrate Rinderknech. I think you're looking at a pretty tough matchup for him. Not a great returner of serve. Lehechka does have a good serve, and the forehand to back it up is dangerous on these courts. I think Lehechka wins. Do I think that it's going to be an easy win? That's the tricky part. I'm going to say no. The problem is the team total for Lehechka is 13.5, and for Rinderknech, it's 11.5. So I don't mind the Rinderknech option, maybe to win a set or maybe to even lose 2 close sets. I mentioned before both matches were 7-6, 7-5 in some capacity. So maybe you want the over in this one. You pick 1 close set, then maybe you end up going 3. 22.5 minus 140. I don't hate that. I think Lehechka does win. You could also argue, after having a big win, one of the biggest wins of his career, beating Zverev again for the second time this season, maybe mentally he ends up kind of taking his foot off the gas. Maybe Rinderknech no-shows after having such a big win, and Lehechka coasts. It's possible for this one. I think Lehechka wins. I think that Rinderknech is not a good enough returner, and like Rex points out, Lehechka will be very aggressive on the forehand side. He'll take time away from Rinderknech's ground strokes, and we know Zverev has been so passive, it allowed Rinderknech time to actually load up on both wings. I think Lehechka's main game plan will be to take time away from Rinderknech by keeping the aggression on. I think he'll end up winning. I think Lehechka's been in good form. I think he ends up probably winning in straight sets if I had to go for a prediction. I know that the head-to-head suggests you might end up getting an over for this one, but I think there's some value on Lehechka. It's a good letdown spot for Rinderknech, who had a massive win. Now he's against an opponent who plays a different style of tennis. Zverev's more passive. Lehechka is more aggressive, and Lehechka has served very well in the event. I think Lehechka might not get broken in this one. We'll see. I'm not going to bet this match. I don't see much value, and we already have Lehechka to win the quarter at a good price. Give me Lehechka in straight sets at around even money. I see minus 103. Not going to bet this, though, but I think that's the angle I will take for this one. Anyway, it's going to wrap it up for the 4th round. Time going into the lock and dog picks. Before we get into the lock and dog, reminder brought to you by our sponsor, which is Arnold Fantasy. So use them to play Fantasy Pick'em with 5 times your entry. Pick higher or lower on your favorite player stats, available for some different sports as well. And a reminder, use the new offer for new customers. Play just $5, get $100 bonus funds. Use promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. They're off to a great start in college football and the NFL, and they have a lot of options for props and for picks. They're also giving away weekly cash prizes just for tracking your bets in the app. Track 5 bets of any type from the same model that you build, and you can win $1,000. So free giveaway if you just track 5 plays from any model that you build. Also, we have a nice promo deal with Rhythm. You'll get a nice discount off your first month. Use the promo code SGPN25 when you download the Rhythm app with the code SGPN25 for a quarter off first month. Once again, download Rhythm. Use code SGPN25 for a quarter off your first month. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the 4th round of Shanghai. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. Skipped a couple matches we're going to get to for this portion of the show. For the lock, I'm going to go to the first match, actually, between Diallo and Bergs. Give me Bergs' team total over 12.5 at minus 110. So Bergs has beaten good competition so far in the event. Diallo has really not faced anybody. So by comparison, Bergs has beaten Cerundolo in straight sets, beat Ruud in about 2.5, Ruud retired, and beat Korda. So 3 pretty good opponents on hard court. As for Diallo, he's beaten nobody. Beat Bonzi, who has really been up and down all season, beat him in straight sets, and played 3 games against Goffin. So yes, Diallo's looked fine. He hasn't beaten anybody worth a damn in the entire event, and he was quite bad leading up to this event. So based on that, I think Bergs is actually pretty alive to win it outright. But I think Bergs' team total is pretty cheap here at minus 110 for the 12.5. We know Diallo is a very good server, not a great returner. Bergs is minus 200 to win a set. So if you're picking him to win a set, you're probably going to get at least 175 or 76 based on Diallo's good serving, and you can go to 3 sets. I think there's a couple ways to get there. Bergs could win in straight sets with a breaker, could end up losing in 3 sets, or he wins in 3. Couple of scripts with Diallo, I think, is overrated. Yes, I know he beat him twice in the previous meetings recently, including one grass final meeting a couple months ago. Faced off on grass and on clay. Not really going to read too much into it. I think Bergs has played very well in the event, and Diallo, the sample's too small because he played basically one match in the entire event. He's here in the 4th round. So I think that it's a pretty expensive price on Diallo at minus 190. Bergs has played very well, and even the win that Diallo had against Bergs in the grass meeting in Den Bosch, it was 7-5, 7-6. And Bergs actually faced less break points than Diallo. So I think that Bergs has played well enough to win at least one set. And if that's good enough for me at minus 200, I can definitely capitalize on the team total at 12.5 at 90 cents cheaper of a price. Give me Bergs team total over 12.5 at minus 110 as my lock for the show. For the dog, I'm going to go to the Greek Sport match against Vacherat. I saw it mentioned in the comments section earlier. Looking at the actual comments here, I want to pull it up. I saw somebody asking about the over 2.5 sets here, as Rex brought it up. That's my play. I'm going with the over 2.5 sets in the Greek Sport match at plus 146. Now, Vacherat's had a bunch of marathons lately. 5 of his last 6 matches did not end in straight sets, excluding the Makic retirement, because Makic was injured and the match did not finish. This play would avoid it. So Vacherat, just by making it to the 4th round as a Cinderella, has not had an easy path. He has been dropping sets. Now, Greek Sport, as I said previously, has not been in good form for the last couple of months. And yes, he beat Sinner, and he was able to make it into the round of 16 here. However, he's been dropping sets consistently for multiple months in a row. Greek Sport has lost at least one set in 11 straight matches. 11 straight. Ended up beating Sinner in 3. Ended up winning his first round match here in 3 as well, as he ended up beating the likes of Brooksby in 3. The point is, Greek Sport has been playing better recently. Fatigue's always an issue. Fitness is an issue. Both guys are good at serving. I can see a breaker here. But Greek Sport, I know he just beat Sinner. I'm not going to suddenly crown as being a guy who I expect to dominate a match that he should win, because he's proven consistently he's going to punt sets. When you lose at least one set in 11 straight, and I can get the over 2.5 sets at plus 146, I think that's an insane price. I understand Greek Sport should, keyword should, win this match, but you end up losing a set in 11 straight. I can't pick you to roll. I think that Vacherat's a good enough server. I think he's played well enough in the event to take a set off of him. I see Manzi asking about Bergs' fitness. I thought he looked fine. He ended up beating Cerundolo in straight sets. He had a day off, of course. I think he'll be fine for this one. So you could argue fitness maybe for Bergs, but I don't see an issue for him. I thought he looked good against Cerundolo. He won in straight sets, and the fact is he had a day off. So I like the schedule, kind of canceling out the fitness issues based on the schedule. So I'm not really concerned about Bergs' fitness for this one. But I think you're looking at a good spot for Vacherat and Greek Sport to go to the distance here, to go to a 3rd set. And I like the price here. That'll be my choice as the dog for the show. So once again, the actual lock and dog picks, the lock's going to be on Bergs' team total, over 12.5 at minus 110. For the dog, I'm going to go with Greek Sport and Vacherat over 2.5 sets at plus 146 and wrap it up for the show. Back once again in a couple of days for the quarterfinals. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all